Good evening, everyone. My name's Scott Hamway. I'm the Director of Bus Facility Modernization for the Mbta, and want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I want to start by just making sure everybody saw that notice when we joined that this meeting is being recorded. So I want to make sure folks are aware of that. I just want to quickly introduce some of the key Mbta staff who are joining me here tonight, who may weigh in at some point. Alexandra Markevich will definitely weigh in. She's the manager of the Bus Facility Modernization Program, and she's going to be sharing presentation duties with me tonight. The MBTA's Chief Engineer, Eric Studhoff, is in the meeting, as is our Chief Real Estate Officer, Richard Henderson. And then Laura Regal, also as Senior Project Manager of the Office of the Chief Engineer, is with us as well tonight. Just wanted to start before we get into it to recognize, I see Representative Liz Malia has joined us. Thank you for joining, Representative. Good to see you. And I'll let folks know if any other elected officials join us this evening. So I think with that, we can go on to the next slide. So with the agenda, so this is this is a really exciting project for us. We appreciate everyone taking the time to come out tonight and share your thoughts with us and learn more about the project. Before we begin the PowerPoint, just wanted to go over the Q&A process with everybody to make sure everybody is comfortable with how we use the control panel to interact with us. So during the Q&A, you can press the raise hand button to ask a question, or you can type a question into the chat box as well. And then I think we may have a couple folks joining by phone, so they can use the *9 button on the phone to raise your hand. And send any questions to all hosts. So if you have a question, send it to all hosts rather than any individual person. And then we'll do is we'll call on you in the order that you raise your hands. After you raise your hand, you're gonna need to wait to be recognized and unmuted before speaking. And after you share your question or comment, we'll lower your hand, and then you can be returned to the muted state. And then we're also going to respond to questions and comments that have been typed into the chat, which you can do throughout the presentation. You may want to hold those until after the presentation. Sometimes folks will ask questions during the presentation that end up getting answered later in the presentation, and it can be difficult for myself or Alexander while we're presenting to kind of see those pop up. So it might make sense to wait till the end, but certainly you can submit those throughout the presentation. And if you have any questions on this process or these instructions, please reach out to the staff using the chat box. So I think we'll go to the next slide. So this is the agenda slide. So basically, we're going to introduce you to the MBTA's, start by introducing you to the vision that we have for the new Arborway bus maintenance facility, which, we recognize this isn't a new project for many of you. So it may not be an introduction to some, and then also to talk about how it fits into the MBTA's overall bus modernization and electrification strategies. Alexandra will then discuss the current site conditions and review our preliminary concept for the facility. And then after we review next steps, we'll devote the rest of our time together this evening to answer your questions and hear your comments. So we go to the next slide. Yeah, so we'll start with a high level vision for the Arbor Way facility. We're incredibly excited about what this facility represents for not just our bus riders, but certainly for our bus riders, but for the community and our employees, our workforce. When this facility opens in 2027, we will have almost entirely eliminated emissions over a large portion of the MBTA's bus network, including areas that serve some of our most transit critical riders. And the new Arbor Way is going to allow us to operate service more reliably and with more capacity. And while Alexandra and myself and many of us on the team spend most of our days working to advance these types of outcomes for our bus riders, we recognize that this facility project affects more than just our bus riders, and that we have a great opportunity here to meet some of the well-documented community desires for an attractive and modern facility, and one whose design can really help Washington Street reach its potential as a vibrant main street within the Jamaica Plain neighborhood. So really exciting project for us. If we go to the next slide. So the project, while it is a project that has a long history and is a long time coming, it also fits really squarely into the bus facility modernization program that the Mbta launched just 2 years ago. And this program is centered on the system-wide decarbonization of our bus fleet. The chart on the left shows the electrification strategy that we unveiled back in April of this year. The strategy centers on building or rebuilding all of our bus facilities so they can support battery electric buses. The blue shaded area that you see in the chart to the left here, that's our facility capacity to support BEVs, battery electric buses, BEVs. And we've highlighted the Arborway facility's role in this journey. And then that green line is sort of an annual chart showing how our BEV fleet will then rise over time as we get more electric and get more facilities on board that can support that. But it's important, I think it's important for us to remember, and we always try to remind all of our partners and stakeholders that as we aggressively pursue this decarbonization effort, the greatest role the T plays in reducing emissions is really by being a competitive and reliable mobility option, particularly for those riders that lack other options. That's why our program is modernizing all of our garages to give our workforce the tools that they need to be able to keep our fleet reliable. And it's why we're going to continue to keep buying 80 to 100 buses every year. That's an important way in which we keep our average fleet age down and keep our fleet reliable. And while we will, and it's also why we're going to continue to seek opportunities to increase the size of our fleet to meet demand that we've already seen come back on some routes, in which we expect to continue to return to pre-COVID levels and ultimately surpass them as the region continues to grow. So if we go to our next slide, we'll just talk briefly about that electrification strategy. So, we're really excited about this. We're proud of it. It's one of the most aggressive bus electrification strategies in the nation. Like nearly all of our peers in North America, we've identified battery electric buses as the vehicle technology that's going to get us there. What is this going to mean for the communities we serve? It means an almost total elimination of emissions compared with the buses that we operate today, the CNG or diesel buses we operate today, with only a small amount of emissions in the initial years of this transition that are associated with on the coldest days of the year when we'll need to complement the bus's electric heating system with auxiliary systems. The Mbta's new renewables only electricity contract means that 100% of Mbta electricity comes from renewable sources. And like electric cars that many of you may be familiar with, these vehicles are also going to be much quieter, and that's going to really change. One of the things that's going to change the experience of living near one of these Mbta facilities. It's going to be a dramatically improved experience to have us as a neighbor. If we go to the next slide, and then there's other ways in which the experience is going to be different than it has been historically. These images here show you our first project in the program, which is our battery electric bus facility in Quincy. The facilities, we're building, they're really designed to be fully enclosed modern facilities. So, at Arbor Way and other locations, you'll see bus storage out in the open. You'll see some maintenance activities out in the open. Those are all going to be occurring inside these new facilities that we're building. We're very proud of the Quincy project, on which we've just recently started some early construction activities. And it's set to open in 2024, which is a really important date for us to hit. Quincy, we led with Quincy because it's a century-old building that is obsolete, and it prevents us from basically operating anything other than our oldest pre-2010 diesel buses. And in 2024, when that opens, we're going to be able to replace our highest emissions diesel buses in the fleet with a battery electric bus fleet. So this is a really exciting first step for us, and we think it's really going to help us tell the story of what we're trying to do when we come to other communities like the Arborway community. Go to the next slide. Yeah, but Arborway is very clearly our next priority. We identified it as such back in April when we presented our electrification strategy to our board. And some of the key justifications for that decision are listed here. So, the facilities at the top in terms of the percentage of low-income households and people of color living along the routes that we operate out of Arborway. The existing facility, which is certainly nothing that I have to explain to folks living in the area, it's significantly exceeded its useful life. It's in poor condition. And one of the most critical reasons to focus on Arborway and focus on it now is the fleet that we operate out of there. So we operate an entirely compressed natural gas fleet out of that facility. And that fleet right now is set to be retired starting in 2028, which is less than a year after we're targeting the opening of this new facility. So since CNGs are really the only buses we can currently support out of Arbor Way, it was really important that we prioritize this facility next. If we didn't, we'd likely need to kind of double down and procure another generation of CNG buses at the end of the decade. And then due to Federal Transit Administration rules on fleet procurements, we then would be required to hold on to those buses for another 14 years. So for all of these reasons on this slide, this really felt like a no-brainer to us that this was going to be our next big priority for facility modernization after Quincy. And then the next slide's this is like a fun slide that just kind of tells the history of public transit facilities on the site. It's been a streetcar. It was a streetcar yard starting in the late 19th century, with buses being added in 1920s, and it sort of served a mix of buses and streetcars for most of the 20th century. And while the Mbta and its predecessor agencies have been headquartered in a couple of buildings in the Park Square area downtown, where I'm sitting right now, for most of the last century, our official headquarters for a period of time, for a couple of decades, was down at the 500 Arborway site, on this campus, essentially across from Forest Hills. So we go to the next slide. The next phase of the history is probably, for some folks on the call, maybe has been more frustrating than fun for many of you who've been involved. Alexandra and myself have not been directly involved with a lot of this history, but we thought it was important to recognize that we're definitely leading. We're definitely heading into this effort and recognize that we're leading a project that can benefit from the decades of community interest and engagement that came before us. And also, given that funding proved to be a roadblock to advancing earlier concepts that the MBTA had, we think it's absolutely critical that we take advantage of the opportunities presented today, particularly with federal infrastructure funding and grant opportunities associated with vehicle electrification projects. Next slide talks about one of the big outcomes of the recent period of history and community engagement around the site was the 2001 MOU between the City of Boston and the MBTA. There were a number of provisions in that document, ranging from fleet size and makeup, parking, as well as the incorporation of the city's former pull yard into the site plan. So we sort of, we started our work on this project using the MOU as a starting point. And while some of the provisions in the MOU have kind of already been addressed or no longer reflect the current needs of various stakeholders, we have, as Alexandra will walk us through in a few minutes, attempted to address the ones that we've understood to be the most critical for the community, and in particular the one bolded at the bottom, which is the desire to see 8 acres of this site preserved for community uses. So before handing the baton off to Alexandra, I think I have one more slide that I will do. Yep. So I'll just discuss our kind of preliminary concept for, she's gonna discuss the site and the building. I just wanted to highlight some of the service impacts of this, of our program for Arbor Way. So one big change here is we are proposing to increase the size of the fleet at Arbor Way from the current 118 bus fleet to a 200 bus fleet. And in addition to that, allowing us to replace, the current CNG fleet with battery electric bus technology, which will electrify all of the current routes out of Arbor Way. It's also going to allow us to electrify more routes in Roxbury, Dorchester, Matapan faster than we would otherwise be able to. So if you look at the map on the left, all of those, and I recognize it's probably hard to read, but all of those lines in green with numbers, those are all of the routes that currently come out of the Arbor Way garage today, served by that 118 bus fleet. So all of those routes would be converted to battery electric bus. Because we're building a larger facility, we can also pull in the 4 or 5 routes that you see highlighted in either dark blue, which are routes that are currently served out of our Cabot facility in South Boston, or our Southampton facility. The 2 lighter blue routes would also come out. And the great statistic that we're excited about is that once this facility is completed and we fold those routes in addition to all the routes currently here, 40% of the local bus service in the city of Boston will be served with electric buses, which we think is a great down payment on this, what's going to be close to a 20-year program for us. One other feature that we're really excited about here is the fact that this will be our first facility where we are storing or housing both 60-foot articulated buses and 40-foot, the traditional 40-foot buses that come out of Arbor Way. And there's a number of great benefits to that. One of them is it allows us to upgrade some routes that are already out of Arbor Way that are crowded, to upgrade those to higher capacity 60-foot vehicles. So the obvious candidate there to start with is the 32 serving Hyde Park Avenue, which has seen a lot of its ridership come back. It also allows us to take a couple routes that we serve out of our Southampton facility with 60-foot buses and pull them into Arbor Way so we can electrify them sooner. So the 28, which is the Blue Hill Avenue bus route running north to south on the map, that route we're intending to move over to Arbor Way once it's complete. And then the 39 bus, which logically would be out of Arbor Way were it not for the fact that it's on 60-foot buses today, we'll be able to pull that bus into the garage that makes more sense geographically for it and also electrify it sooner. And as many of you may be aware, the Mbta is well into a multi-year process to redesign its bus network, and having more opportunities to upgrade routes to 60-footers is going to be important. So this is part of our strategy to not overly rely on the Southampton garage. So that's kind of my portion of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Alexandra to take us through the site plan and the facility itself.
Sure, thanks, Scott. So I'll start with just an orientation of the existing conditions. The site is split into two parcels, one on the Washington Street side and one on the Arbor Way side. As many of you are familiar with, on the Washington Street side, that's where we house our current CNG maintenance and storage operations. And as you can see from this image, the storage occurs outside and the maintenance occurs in a number of buildings on the northern portion of the site. And then we have employee parking on the southern portion of the site. And then in the 500 Arbor Way site, we have our former headquarters where we still have a couple of functions, including our archive and materials lab. And then to the east of our site is Boston's former pole yard, which I believe today functions as a zero waste facility where the community can drop off compost. Next slide. And so there's a number of conditions on the site that really serve as kind of constraints or boundaries shaping the way we're thinking about this preliminary concept. So first, as Scott kind of described earlier, these modern all indoor facilities, they are really quite different from what we've seen in the past, and they do require a significant footprint and generally work best when they have a sort of large, more rectangular shape. They're challenging to site on sort of odd shaped parcels. And so with our existing site, we see that the Stony Brook culvert sort of bisects the site along those parcel lines. And we know we want to avoid building over that culvert because it would be challenging and expensive and may require even moving the culvert. And so, we also know that during construction of the new facility, we want to maintain the existing operations so that we can keep buses on the road through the duration of a construction. And that this Washington portion of the site is the preferred portion for those community uses. And so that pushes us to looking at the Arbor Way side of the site for siting our new facility. And we found that kind of we need the full length of and width of that site, including the pole yard, in order to meet the needs of a modern facility. Next slide. So over the next couple of slides, I'll talk through what our concept is from a couple of different perspectives, and I'll start sort of with the outside and work our way down to details. So first, since we're sort of looking at the footprint on the eastern portion of the site to the east of the culvert, that opens up a total of 8 acres for community uses that we've identified along that Washington Street portion of the site. And we know that this is wide enough for a couple of rows of development of kind of a different types of footprint that are certainly in line with the types of uses that we've seen identified in prior planning efforts, including Plan JP Rocks. As part of this project, we're also planning to construct The Lotus Street extension that's also been identified in previous planning efforts. They would extend from Forest Hill Street to Washington Street as a two-way public right-of-way with sidewalks on both sides. And then on the southern side of the site, we're looking at that Emerald Necklace connection that was made through the Casey Overpass project as a boundary as well, to ensure that we can preserve that connection. Next slide, please. And so looking at our building, we're looking to house 200 buses in a building where we have the footprint outlined here on the slide in this concept. And though it is quite large, we did work to minimize the footprint as much as possible by putting bus operations on 2 levels and putting all the parking underground, which also meets the MOU stipulation to not have parking on the surface. All the operations will be indoors, including the queuing for buses coming in and out of the facility, which actually gives it this sort of like odd, slightly off from a rectangle shape. And we'll look at what that looks like on the inside on the next slide. And by doing that, we're able to really maximize the energy efficiency and then meet some of our sustainability goals for this building in terms of heating and building operations. And so we're just at the beginning of design, and so we don't have the facade designed yet, but I wanted to pull back that image from Quincy just to show as sort of a visual precedent for what a facade for this type of facility might look like. Next slide, please. And in terms of the interior, we wanted to give folks a little bit of a sense of what are the inner workings of this facility and sort of how we would make use of it and why we need this type of footprint. The buses would come in and out off of Arbor Way in the southeastern corner of the facility, and all the operations would occur on a counterclockwise basis, which is best for our bus operations. They would pass through service lanes on the southern portion of the building, and then we have the maintenance space on the first floor in the eastern side of the building on the right of the screen, where we'd have pull-through bays for our 60-footers so that they wouldn't have to back up, and then we'd have back-in bays for our 40-foot buses. And then on the sort of western 2/3 of the building on the first floor and the entirety of the second floor, which we would have ramps going up and down to, we'd have space for bus storage for 60-footers and 40-footers, as well as the bus charging would occur where they're stored. We're citing the sort of administrative needs for this type of facility. So your locker rooms, offices, inspectors, etc., along the northern edge of the facility that backs up to the community there, as well as some additional space for administrative needs along the Arbor Way. And I would like to note that even though we're saying 2 levels, it's 2 levels for bus operations. So that means that this type of facility would be kind of in height comparable to the other new development in the area, similar to sort of like the Metromark, in order to accommodate the needs for buses, which require kind of greater height than like a residential floor plan. Next slide, please. So I talked about this a little bit on the prior slide, but in terms of access, we are looking at the Arbor Way as being the primary access point for buses. However, we know that there's some challenges with the existing intersection between Arbor Way and Washington Street for ensuring that all our buses can turn left down Hyde Park Ave to get to the lower upper busway at Forest Hills. And so we'll be working with the city to identify what type of improvements might be made to help meet our operational needs. And pending the outcome of that discussion, we will determine exactly how we might make use of the Lotus Street, Washington Street intersection as a secondary access point, whether it could be solely emergency access or might need to be something additional. And then we'd look to the Forest Hill Street as the access point for our employees to get to the underground parking garage. So I just wanted to wrap up with a little bit more detail on the electrification piece, as some folks in the room might be interested. We're looking, as I mentioned, at having the charging occur where the buses are stored and parked overnight. And it would occur using an overhead charging with a pantograph system, similar to what you see in this image here. And we'd have software that would help. They would essentially orchestrate the charging so that we could manage the energy demands for charging 200 buses overnight, but also make sure that we can meet our service needs in the morning. And so we're working with the utility already, and we'll be working with them closely over the next couple of years to identify the upgrade that would be needed in order to make sure we have enough power to charge 200 buses, as well as looking to evaluate some opportunities for supplemental charging that could occur, kind of like top-off charging that could occur at other key points in our network where buses meet and meet over the course of a day. And I think that that is all, and I'll just turn it back to Scott to wrap up with our next steps.
Thanks, Alexandra. Appreciate that, and also want to recognize Representative Holmes, who joined us somewhere along the line there. Thank you for joining us, Representative. So yeah, so where we are in the process now, that we're obviously kicking off the sort of public facing side of this now. We've started our 0 to 15% design process, which Alexandra just shared the sort of preliminary outputs from that. There's going to be some of that initial exploratory work we have to do with any construction project. There'll be some borings happening out on the site, probably starting in the next couple of weeks, so that you might see some activity out there that's associated with just sort of early exploratory information gathering on the site. We're going to be commencing our environmental review process, the MIPA and NEPA processes, and then, you know, I want to just emphasize that while, you know, the MBTA will typically come out and do a, you know, large format public meeting like this, hopefully in the not too distant future in person with all of you, but until then remote, and that the next design threshold for that would be at the 15% in the spring. You know, Alexandra and I and the team are certainly interested in, you know, coming out and speaking with folks about this project, answering, you know, more specific questions folks might have. Just reach out. Our contact information's on the next slide, and you can reach out, and we're happy to try to, you know, fit into any existing agendas that the different groups out there might have. Happy to do that over the winter, so we won't go away entirely until that next meeting. And then starting the middle of next year, we would roll then into our final design phase, which would take us through. At the MBTA, we have a 30% design, and then a 75% design, and then the final design. That process is going to take us close to 2 years, starting next summer. We'll be going out to bid to get a new designer for that. We do have asterisks here because our capital plan, which for the last several years has kind of been, you know, a year-to-year exercise. We do need to secure the final design funding for the project to keep the project rolling, but we're optimistic that we're going to be able to do that. Continue to have these types of meetings during that. We'll be finishing our state and federal environmental review process during that period. And then our goal, again, pending funding, would be to start construction on this facility in 2024, right around when the MBTA will be, you know, wrapping up work on our first modern facility at Quincy. And then the goal is, again, to complete this by the end of 2027. It's an aggressive schedule. It's one that, you know, we're going to try to meet. We do have a little bit of slack before we have to start retiring the existing fleet, but we do definitely want to try to move as quickly as we can, because we don't want to run into a situation where we can't get that fleet retired on time and have reliability concerns that affect our riders. So that's the schedule. And then, as promised, our contact information is on the next slide, which we can maybe pause on for a few minutes. And then I guess now we're at the point where we would transition to any questions you have or comments, and Laura Regal from our team will sort of MC that and go through the hand raising and the chat questions that have come in.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Before we begin the QA, I would like to invite any local officials to have the opportunity to comment. So please raise your hand if you'd like to speak and I can unmute you. Okay, I'm not seeing any of those hands. So we'll go into the QA process. So as Scott mentioned earlier, we will respond to questions and comments in the order that we receive them. So we'll start with a few people who've raised their hand, and then we'll go to the chats. And please, if you hear a similar question or we answer your question, please lower your hand and remove yourself from the queue so that we can ensure that we can get to everybody's questions tonight. So I'm going to start with a couple of people who've had their hands raised for a while. So we'll start with Chad and then we'll go on to Franklin.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, as I was, these are some questions, yes, like you said, that I had from the beginning of the presentation. So here's the first one I want to ask. How are waste materials disposed of by the MBTA? And another thing that I'm really curious about is in what neighborhoods are these materials disposed? Like I'm wondering if the MBTA, if they choose certain neighborhoods or if, you know, if they dispose any materials, you know, like, I mean, talking about fossil fuels and whatnot, close to some of these neighborhoods that they serve. I'm thinking if these materials have been disposed of close to in areas or in the neighborhoods in which they serve, just like where Arbor Way is, or where it's going to be once it's renovated, like Jamaica Plain, Rosendale, and Matapan. I'm just curious because, and one of the reasons I asked that question is because we, you know, in many neighborhoods and communities of color, I mean, we are exposed to a lot more toxins than say people who live in neighborhoods such as, you know, Wellesley or Weston. So just hoping I could get some feedback on that.
So thanks, Chad, for that question. So I'm going to apologize because I like to try to answer as many questions as I can on the spot in these meetings. I admit I don't have an answer to that question off the top of my head, but I can certainly, unless Alexander or someone else on the team wants to jump in, we can certainly commit to getting you an answer. If you want to maybe send me your contact information in the chat, and I can follow up with a call tomorrow.
Sure, sure.
And you could send that contact information directly to me, Chad, and then I can follow up tomorrow with you.
All right. I'll send you an email now then, if that's better.
Or chat. Yeah. But I apologize. We do like to try to answer as many as we can. So not tough start then. So hopefully we'll do better on the next one.
All right. That's fine. I appreciate
it. Okay. Thanks, Chad. The next question will be Franklin and then Fatima.
Hi, thanks very much. This is Franklin Salambeni. I'm chair of the Arborway Committee for Public Transit. And I was an original member of CPCAY way back in the late 90s when we started this process. I think the proposal for electrifying the fleet is really an exciting one, and I'm happy to see it. I do have some questions, though. In your original slide, you indicated that these electric buses will be more reliable. And I have some questions about reliability. With the electrification of the fleet and the introduction of electric buses, battery electric buses, originally, I think you had some difficulty finding an electric bus that could actually work in the winter and supply not only power to the vehicle, but also the heating system. And I assume, although you didn't mention it, the air conditioning system for the summer. Can you indicate whether this kind of an auxiliary diesel system, I would guess, is being used by other systems, and what the reliability in other cold weather systems and what level of reliability they have? That's the first question. The other two are related. I'm wondering what the mileage is when a bus is fully charged. In other words, once you pull out in the morning, what can you expect the bus to be able to, how many miles would you expect it to be able to run during the day before it needed to be recharged? And secondly, what happens when the lights go up? What happens if there is a kind of a region-wide power failure? What happens to the system and the ability to operate buses under that set of circumstances? So those are my three questions.
Okay, thanks, Franklin. I'll try to answer them all, and then we'll just let me know if I missed any of them. So we do have 5 battery electric buses that we got as part of a pilot program. We operate them out of our Southampton facility, and they are operated on the Silver Line. Those buses do not have the diesel heater that I referenced earlier, and you're right, Franklin. That's these systems can be used to supplement the electric heating and cooling system on the buses. So we focus on the cold because I think that's where the bigger issues have been for us. But we found that our range decreased by sometimes 50, sometimes even a little bit more than 50% on those buses on the cold days when it gets down to 20, 15 degrees, which obviously make them a little bit, less reliable for us. We can't really, we knew we couldn't pursue battery electric bus technology with the state of battery technology today and deliver service reliably for our customers. All of our peers that we've talked to some of the manufacturers that are either exploring BEVs or buying BEVs in Canada and in the northern portion of the US are doing it with these diesel auxiliary heating systems. And I want to just clarify, Franklin, that these vehicles will all have electric heating and cooling on them. That's going to be the primary way we keep our passengers comfortable on these buses, will be with electric heat and cooling. These heaters are really just a feature that gives us the confidence to start moving as aggressively as we're proposing to with buying battery electric buses. So the experience of other systems is that it really does allow you to kind of focus it on those coldest days of the year and meet your service needs, which again is our top priority for what we're doing. So that's kind of our experience. I think it's about 150 miles is what we try to hit, Franklin, for a service day. So the heaters will allow us to get there on those cold days rather than relying solely on the battery for them. When the lights go out, I think we're designing these systems to be resilient to that. When it's a local failure, we're going to have generating capacity on site, backup generation. It's not going to allow us to kind of replicate the entire charging scheme that at a given facility. We can't have that much backup generation capability, but we've run some models, and we think there are ways that we could get through a couple day challenge at a particular facility. So with backup generation and just kind of changing our approach to charging. However, yeah, it certainly in a world where we have a region-wide blackout that's extended, buses would become another part of our kind of regional infrastructure that would be affected by such a shutdown. But I think right now that's a price that we feel like we are willing to pay to try to do our part to meet the sort of Commonwealth's aggressive carbon reduction goals. So hopefully, I don't know, Franklin, if that hit them all, but
actually it did, but it just raised another question, a brief one. Have you been contemplating off-site electric charging stations, for example, at the terminus of a route at Cleary Square, for example, or somewhere else?
Or Walcott Square, yeah, sure. So with our first facility at Quincy, Franklin, the nature of the routes out of that facility, they're a little bit less intensively used as the routes that we've got coming out of this garage. So we're pretty comfortable that we can manage all of our charging needs relatively easily just by relying on depot charging. And that's a combination of, charging overnight because a lot of our buses start coming home, certainly by 9 o'clock at night, they're almost all home by midnight, 1 in the morning. And then we're not sending them back out until almost 5 in the morning. So we've got enough overnight window. And then at least the way our service is designed today, Franklin, we do have there is a big drop in the number of buses we have out on the street in the middle of the day. So we feel pretty comfortable that we can meet our needs at Quincy without any en route charging. And particularly in the diesel heaters, obviously give us even more confidence on that front. With Arborway, we are in the early stages of exploring multiple locations in the network that could support Arborway Garage. So we would have opportunities at places like Nubian or Ashmont or Walcott Square, Cleary Square, places like that, or even frankly at Forest Hill Station. So that's something that we're approaching Arborway with the expectation that we would still be able to manage our charging needs at the depot, given today's service levels. But we do think that given the demand on these routes and the fact that coming out of the network redesign process, there may even be more demand on some of these corridors, we want to make sure we've got some capacity out in the field. But our strategy, because we're trying to do this as quickly as we can and reduce emissions as quickly as we can, is to kind of push forward with the depot strategy, and not sort of like wait until we feel like we've got all the I's dotted and T's crossed on en route charging, because each one of those projects is going to be its own little mini exercise that we have to work through. So we're not taking our eye off the ball on it, but we're focusing initially on getting this facility designed and then exploring some of those locations for en route charging for the reasons you mentioned, Franklin.
Well, thank you very much, Scott.
Thanks, Franklin.
Okay, the next question will go to Fatima.
Hi, good evening, thank you. So the number 28 bus right now, the way it starts is the first stop is coming out of the Matapan station, and then it goes all the way down the entirety of Blue Hill Avenue. The majority of the high schools in the area, particularly the John D. O'Brien and the Madison High School, and there are a number of middle schools that are serviced by the number 28 bus. My question is that right now the Mbta announced that services beginning December 19th, there'll be some morning routes that'll be cut because of lack of bus drivers, particularly the number 23 and the 29, which are also high ridership lines. So my question is, is the ultimate goal to have all of the buses that right now come out of a station like Matapan Station and service, the communities of Matapan, parts of Grove Hall, as well as Roxbury, are they going to be coming out of the Arbor Way?
So,
is that the goal?
Right. So I guess, and there's a couple different questions there too, Fatma. So please let me know if I don't
Sure.
get to all of them. So right now, for example, the 31 is one of the big routes out of the square, right out of Matapan Square, serving Forest Hills. That's a route that currently comes out of Arbor Way. So that's a route that's going to stay at Arbor Way. The only difference will be that'll be a route that will then have battery electric buses on it rather than CNG buses. So that's what would happen with the 31. With the 28, what happens today is the 28 comes out of a facility we have up at Southampton Street, kind of on the South Boston, Dorchester, Roxbury, kind of where all those neighborhoods meet, several miles north. And what happens when those buses get pulled out in the morning is they either make their way over to Blue Hill Avenue and drive out of service down to Matapan Square to start their trip, or they might go to Ruggles or to Nubian to start their trip from there. And they just sort of like enter service from Southampton, and then they get turned on. And then for the rider's perspective, it's sort of invisible as to where the bus came out of. So what we're proposing here, Fatima, for the 28 is that when we build this facility, because it's going to allow us to accommodate those larger buses like the ones we run on the 28, we're going to be able to pull the 28 into Arbor Way. And the good news thing about that is we're going to have a zero emissions 60-foot bus on Blue Hill Avenue, much faster than if we waited until we got around to rebuilding the Southampton garage, which is kind of farther out in our sequence right now. So we get to convert that bus to electric bus service faster. And then as far as the riders are concerned, it should be really invisible to them. I think what a bus would do is it would come out of Arbor Way, it would make its way across the park, on Morton Street, it would go over to Blue Hill Avenue, and then it would either, turn right and go down to the square and start service down there, or it may come out of the garage and head north to Nubian and Ruggles to start service there. But it wouldn't be any change to anybody in Matapan using the bus. It would just be a different technology, a cleaner technology we'd be running the bus on. And then for the other routes you mentioned, the 23 and 29, there's no plan to pull those into this garage at this time. We are, however, looking at the 16 and the 22, which don't, really make it down as far as Matapan. They kind of peel off at Talbot or Columbia. But those routes are routes that we're looking to shift from Cabot over to this garage, because the 16, for example, comes out of Forest Hills. So it's a logical place to kind of start it over here. And that'll allow us to run zero emissions bus service on at least, one of the sort of heavier routes that are running on Talbot Ave or Columbia Road up in Dorchester. So that's kind of the thinking there. I don't know if Fatima, if I covered everything with that, and I know we're going to talk again soon, hopefully down in Matapan in January, but let me know if you had anything else on that.
No, there's some others, but I can ask them later. Thank you. Let others ask questions.
Okay, thanks, Fatima. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll take one more person who has their hand raised, and then we'll move to some of the questions we've gotten from the chat. So the next person is Bart Mitchell.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question about timing and a question about a couple of urban design questions. The site plan you showed the footprint of the bus facility and the two potential mixed-use redevelopment parcels on Washington Street. From a timing point of view, would it be the case that the entire footprint is needed until the new bus facility is open, both to store the buses until the new building is done and for staging construction on the new building? Or would either of those mixed-use parcels be available sooner? That's one question. The second is, obviously, you'd have activation of Washington Street with the site plan you showed, and along bus facility along the Arbor Way. It'd be great if between now and the 15% drawings, there's any chance to think about activation of the Arbor Way side, whether you can carve out some first floor space for community retail or community services or something that faces the Arbor Way instead of that long a facility that doesn't have any penetration from the street and doesn't have any pedestrians interacting with the site. So the second was more of a comment. The first one was a timing question.
Thanks, Bart. So on your first question about kind of when those parcels would be made available for development, we have not developed a kind of construction phasing plan quite yet, obviously, since we're just at the beginning of design, but at the outset, we do expect that we would need our full footprint of operations through the duration of construction, since it's what's used today and needed today for the facility. However, I expect that as we get more into the detail about construction phasing, we'll know a little bit more. And it's a good comment to take back. And then on your second comment, we do know that it is challenging to co-locate kind of retail or other uses that are public facing with our facilities, given both the space program needs to accommodate our operational needs in this tight site, as well as just needs around security and sort of ensuring that our operations can proceed. It's certainly feasible, but something that's been very challenging, and I think would be extremely challenging given the site. However, we are looking to have that sort of a more administrative wall along the Arbor Way there, at least for a portion of it, which might not have sort of interaction with folks coming in and off the street, but certainly could have more kind of a human scale look in its facade. So hope that answers your question.
Okay, I'm going to move to one of the questions that is related from the chat, and the question is from Susan Granger. Will the MBTA commit to turn over the 8 acres for community work? What will that process look like, and when will it be turned over?
So, yep, so sort of kind of building on what we were just describing, where we're in coordination with the city on how exactly the transaction would occur for that 8 acres. We expect that it would, you know, as I mentioned, occur at the close of construction of our new facility, so we can move fully out of our old facility and into our new facility before pursuing kind of new development on that site. And I think, was that, I didn't jot down, did that hit both parts of the question? Let me just take a look. I think so.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on to another person who has their hand raised, Michael Reiskines. Should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, this is Michael Reiskin from Jamaica Plain. I've got 3 questions. Well, 1 question and maybe 2 requests. The first one, is there going to be heavy maintenance done at this facility? My memory was the old MOU said only light maintenance. Are you adding heavy maintenance?
Michael, were you gonna ask all 3 questions and then?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, if you want. No, that's the question. And the other one is, I appreciate your standing by the MOU, especially the 8 acres. I think that's important. I was on the CPCAY as well, of course. It's important to remember that this community has always embraced a bus facility at this location, contrary to many communities, and we heavily support public transportation. But there were other parts of the MOU that I'm interested in as well, and one might be more for bus operations. There was a commitment that the MBTA, the superintendent of this facility, would be meeting with neighbors on a monthly or as-needed basis throughout the use of the life of this facility, to ensure that there weren't blights or unexpected problems. And there have been complaints about noise and smells from the CNG, and I don't think the MBTA has agreed to the commitment of meeting regularly with the neighbors and the superintendent of the facility. So I ask you to do that as well. And then the third one is related. You might be gun shy on what happened during the CPCAY process, but I would ask that you set up a community advisory committee to work with you on the design of the facility, that similarly to what we did on working on the original Arbor Way. I think that's important. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Maybe Alexander, I'll start, and then if you want to jump in, jump in. I think, you know, in terms of the maintenance activities, Michael, that you're going to have occurring at this facility, 2 things on that. One, it'll be the same types of maintenance that occurs today. Our heavy maintenance on all vehicles occurs up at our Everett shops, up off of Broadway and Lower Broadway and Everett. So this will be the same type of activity that happens at Arbor Way Yard today. The big difference, I think, from the community standpoint is that, as Alexandra explained, this is going to be an all indoor facility. So those activities, instead of happening outside and on the Washington Street side, they'll be happening indoors and over on the Arbor Way side of the site. I think in terms of any issues with the current operation at the facility, I think what I can sort of commit to on the phone, on the call tonight, Michael, is if there are concerns or any issues or problems that you or your neighbors are seeing out there, Alexandra and I are going to be present on this site, thinking about this site for the next 5-6 years. So certainly reach out to us, and we can try to figure out what the issue is and try to help you solve it. So I would sort of encourage you to take us up on that. And again, our contact information was on the deck earlier. Yeah, and then on the last issue, I think we like I said up front, I think our plan for the process is we're going to come out and kind of have our kind of like larger format MBTA meetings like this one at every one of our design thresholds, and we certainly welcome any comments. And Alexandra and I are willing to hang in there and until we get through everyone's questions. And I think we're willing to come out and meet with any groups that want to discuss this facility and share their thoughts. I think that we feel very much like we want to focus on the facility we're going to build here and make sure it meets community needs and make sure that whatever process wants to happen around planning around the 8 acres, that may follow like a parallel track, that again, we want to be a resource to and a participant, where appropriate. But I think in terms of our ability to kind of manage this project and the fairly aggressive schedule that we need to meet if we want to get this facility online in time, I think our kind of preference would be to kind of have our typical MBTA process that we would do around a project like this. But where you can always reach out to Alexandra and myself with any concerns. We're always happy to talk with folks.
Thanks. I don't think that's adequate, Scott. I think much more collaborative interaction with the community usually results in a much better design. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Understood.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question from the chat that is somewhat related from Susan Cebulski. The current bus yard has extremely bright lights on all night. Will you be able to reduce the light pollution with the new facility? And then next we'll go to Sarah, who has her hand up. Okay,
so I'll start on this one. So, yep, and sorry about that. Recognize that that's a challenge. I think with this new facility, all the operations and maintenance will be occurring indoors. So that type of lighting, will not be as significant as it is on this outdoor facility. There will still be lighting needs. But we, as with Quincy, kind of are working to be sensitive to the fact that we are adjacent to a residential area when we're designing that lighting, but also meeting kind of our operational needs for and security needs for the perimeter of the facility. But since it will be all indoors, all that operations will be occurring indoors, it will be different from what's out there today.
Thanks. Now we'll move to Sarah Freeman's question.
Oops. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. I have a few questions. I'm trying to get to the video if I can have one moment there. Or maybe it won't. Okay. A few questions. Is there going to be a comment period? Did I miss that? Or are you just taking comments ongoing?
Yeah, so I think there are normal, there are sort of two ways that we'll, take comment. And Sarah, so as part of our environmental review process, some of the documentation, some of the processes within our MIPA and NEPA process kind of lay out specific guidelines for what a public process needs to look like and whether there needs to be a hearing and an opportunity to submit comments. So that will definitely be a part of this project. I think the way to comment on this project outside of that is to come to meetings like this, share your thoughts, invite us out to meetings that you might be a part of that you think we'd be an appropriate agenda item on. We're happy to come out and take comments there. Our team is on this meeting right now, logging every question that's being asked in the chat or audibly. So that's another way. We've got an email address associated with this garage, which I will I'll try to share in the chat, or maybe someone else in the team can share in the chat for folks, so you can submit comments that way. And then you can, it's probably easier from a bookkeeping standpoint to use that address to share comments with us, but folks who know me, and the same goes for Alexandra, feel free to reach out to us directly by email, and that's another way you can comment. So those are the different methods we have, Sarah, for input.
Thanks. I have a few more here. Stop me if it gets to be too long. Your recording, will the video be available on the project website? Because I know quite a few people who could not be here tonight.
I think I see Alexandra nodding, which is, I guess, means it will be. So that's, yeah. I don't know how soon it goes up.
I think it might take a couple of days. We want to ensure that the presentation is readable for folks with visual impairment. So we'll just be doing that, posting the presentation and posting the recording of this meeting as well. So kind of look out mid next week, if that's all right.
All right, those were the easy ones. Now, one slightly harder one. I know you both were not involved 20 years ago. I was a little surprised to see both curb cuts on the Arbor Way, because there was a lengthy technical mediation after the MIPA review. Are you familiar with that, or were you starting with a blank slate?
I think I'll start, and Scott, if you want to chime in. In terms of both curb cuts on the Arbor Way, in terms of one in and one out.
Yes.
Okay. So, we definitely have the prior MIPA review documents, and we're working with those and plan to work with those as we move forward in the environmental review. And so I would have to take back the specific issue of the number of curb cuts. But, we will definitely address that as we start the conversation with MIPA, and then hold the scoping session and other public process associated with the MIPA process. But we're not planning on starting from scratch on that.
Okay, next, I know the area has changed and it's a whole new ballgame, but there were plans for youth services and green space all around, and just wondering how some of these how much flexibility. In fact, even the Plan JP Rocks is a big change from the MOU, but just wondering how much flexibility there is in the fine tuning here. And by the way, I can't remember if I started out saying I'm not trying to be difficult, very excited about the cleaner, greener transit and want it to work for everyone.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sarah. Definitely not at all. And we've met you before, and appreciate you participating tonight and your comments always. Yeah, I would just say Alexandra could go into more depth on this. I think obviously the Emerald Necklace, the Casey overpass, shared use path feature that's created along the Arborway. That's something that we're certainly preserving as part of this. I think that what happens outside of our facility, I think we want to be a resource. We want to be a good partner. I think we don't want to get too involved in the specifics of what the community may or may want in those 8 acres. I do think that, as I tried to lay out at the beginning of the presentation, Sarah, we feel like this site's a really great opportunity for us to become a much better neighbor by building an all-indoor facility, a facility with a modern look, and a facility that's going to house electric vehicles, which will be quieter, and then also the quiet from the facility being indoors. But in order to kind of hit the the facility size that we're shooting for, which is 200 buses, which has, you know, real benefits to the rest of our network and allows us to do more for some lower income communities faster than we would otherwise. We really, you know, we do need quite a bit of space, and as Alexandra kind of laid out, there's a number of design decisions we've made here that we didn't make at Quincy because we know space is so dear on the site. So we've got employee parking below grade. We've got buses that are returning queued up inside the building. So we've tried to minimize our footprint to create as much space as we can for other uses, but sort of achieving any of those other kind of admirable goals on the site, Sarah, I think would require us to shrink our program, and that will have significant, you know, not insignificant impacts on what we could do for our riders and for some of the other communities we're trying to serve with this project. I don't know, Alexandra, if there's any other thing you want to add to that, or I guess. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question from the chat, and then we'll move on to Mila Miles. So the next question from the chat is from Louise Johnson, and she asks, is there going to be solar power on the roof?
Oh, good one.
Yep, so our design guidelines ensure that we'll build our facilities in order to accommodate solar, and you know, we can ensure that means that we'll have solar up there day one. It's easier to bifurcate the process of installing the solar from the construction of the facility due to how we managed our contracts for solar in other locations in the network. And so that's the process that we're undertaking with Quincy, and we don't have it fully designed yet, but you know, we expect that we could have a similar process for the Arbor Way facility.
Thanks. So next I'll call on Mila Miles. Oops. Actually, she just lowered her hand. So next will be Jeffrey.
I know Mel is not bashful, so there must have been, maybe her question must have got answered by someone else.
Jeffrey, are you there? Okay, might be having technical difficulties there. One more time.
I see Mela's hand still up. Laura, I don't know.
Okay, we'll go back. Mel, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, I lowered my hand when you called on me.
Oh, sorry, wrong button then.
I was trying not to leave it raised. So part of my question did get answered about solar on the roof. And then I thought, why wouldn't the bus also have a solar panel as backup just in case of an emergency? And the last thing that I wanted to know is, this has to do with fleet and the size, the buses that could serve more of the community. And so I wanted to know if the MBTA has any thoughts of buying buses shorter than 40 feet, smaller buses that can possibly serve routes that have lower ridership. So I know that there are electric buses in the world, but you know, routes that have lower ridership could be well served by smaller buses that can make turns. Like there was a bus that got cut out years ago called the 48 bus, and now there's been a lot of development over on Amory Street and in that area. And I think that, you know, to best serve the public, there might be an option of putting shorter buses than 40 footers, as well as the 40 and the 60 articulated buses. So that was my question, in the solar on the roof.
I can, yeah, I'll take that, Mel, and then others can can jump in. So unfortunately, our senior director of our vehicle engineering department, I don't think joined us tonight. He'd probably have more technical answers on the solar one. I can say that our buses they're loaded down with a lot of different kind of electronic systems and equipment and batteries, and I'm sure his answer would be something along the lines of, there's just not the real estate up there to kind of add additional components like that. But I think, as Alexandra stated earlier, that it is part of our design guidelines to make sure the building, would include the accommodation of that feature. As far as like shorter buses, I think, there's a number of reasons why I don't think that really works for the MBTA. Mela, I think that, one thing that's interesting about the T's bus service, and we're one of the top 2 or 3 most productive bus systems in the country in terms of how many people we're carrying per revenue hour or revenue mile. We certainly have lower ridership routes, but even routes that are lower ridership in the T, they tend to be they tend to have a decent load on them during the peak periods we're running them. There's not many routes that we operate today that wouldn't overwhelm a bus shorter than a 40-foot bus. I think that the 60-foot fleet has been, it's been a challenge for the MBTA to absorb that fleet, which was introduced, back at, 15, 16, 17 years ago. We have a specialized facility for that fleet. It complicates our maintenance activities. It complicates our facility designs in terms of the size of our maintenance bays and training for workforce. So I think that, I don't think there's a strong enough service argument for it that would overwhelm some of those technical considerations. And then the other thing to just point out is that we are the sort of most one of the biggest cost drivers of operating bus services is obviously paying for our operations staff to operate them, and that number is the same if it's a 60-foot bus, a 40-foot bus, or a shorter cutaway. So it doesn't end up giving us the sort of like cost savings that some folks might assume we would get from running shorter buses. So I know it's probably an unsatisfying answer, Mala, but that's the one I have right now, and happy to continue the discussion with you offline as always.
No, it's just in some other cities around the country, the short buses are used like community shuttles that go through senior areas and different senior housing facilities and transport seniors around, like when the 18 bus route was cut in the spring. And also like the 55 bus route, those might be served with like community shuttles. Those actually operate free, the community shuttles. I know that in Broward County Transit in South Florida, they have community shuttles that, because there's a lot of seniors, and they just go through like senior communities and take them to major places that they need to get to, like shopping, the library, community centers, and things like that. So that's what I was envisioning. They're electric buses, and they're low maintenance, and they operate them as free shuttles to get folks around. I think, maybe if the MBTA re-envisioned how they were seeing the demand, even though there are times of the day when the buses are kind of packed, but if there were a few more like smaller buses, it might better serve the public like that. That's just my perception, and from traveling to different places in the country, I've seen this work.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you, Mela, and I think that this probably isn't like the best meeting to kind of do a deep dive on that, right? Because I think we'd want to have our service planners here and our vehicle folks. But I think that the bottom line is, whether or not that type of service would make sense in other markets or potentially here in the future. This Arborway facility, we've got our hands full with very high ridership routes, some of which merit even longer buses, 60-foot buses. So we're kind of designing this system around that'll serve the greatest number of our customers sooner and get that service electric. But yeah, I think there's probably other processes which I think you're probably already plugged into, Mela, but which we could connect you to if you're not. That might be better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mela. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming tonight.
Okay, I'm going to try to go back to Jeffrey.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I switched to my headset. I don't know what it was. Yeah, this is Jeff with HDR. I guess, Scott, when you're talking about going with battery electric buses, I guess one question I had, well, I guess there's two questions. One question is, have you all at the MDA just kind of moved away from the possibility of doing hydrogen fuel cell as possibly a mix for those longer routes where, especially in the wintertime in some sense, where you're going to be longer routes, the buses may not make the routes they need to be, so you can supplement, since a hydrogen fuel cell bus has similar route length as a diesel and the same zero emission quality to it. And then number two, and I guess this goes back to, I think, what Alexander was saying, and one of the other questions about solar panels is, we also, I mean, I didn't hear anything about sustainability. And so the question was, I know we had a presentation about net zero. Would you guys, as you're moving forward, think about this as being sort of a net zero facility to really become a carbon neutral building along with your fleet?
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey. So I'll take the first part, and then Alexandra will take the second part. So yeah, so I think that, you know, with hydrogen, we've had a little bit of experience with that in the past. It wasn't, you know, was not sort of MBTA ready at the time. We're certainly monitoring what other peer systems are doing for technologies as part of their decarbonization efforts. And I think what we're hearing right now is that it's just the technology is not quite ready for the type of service that we're running or a lot of our peers are running. I think we have evaluated, we are evaluating each of these facilities as we build them to determine if there's some kind of, future proofing that wants to happen so that we can accommodate hydrogen technology if we want to switch that in the future. I think the Arborway site is complex enough and complicated enough and space constrained enough that this really isn't the right place for us to build in all those additional costs and space necessary to have this facility be one that could sort of like easily be converted to hydrogen if that's the direction the industry goes in the future. We think that, the thing that's the most important thing we can do for our riders and to try to get zero emissions buses out in these communities sooner is to move forward with a battery electric bus garage here. But as we move through this program, and we had that stair step diagram at the beginning, Jeff, that showed, we're going to keep increasing capacity when we start each one of those projects. The plan will be to make a determination, both what's the state of hydrogen technology, do we need to kind of revisit the battery electric bus approach, and then if the technology is not ready yet, like how suitable is the site we're looking at to future proof it so that it could accommodate that in the future. So I think we're taking it like a facility by facility approach, Jeff, and it's just sort of not quite there yet for this one, given the constraints that we have at the site.
Yeah, and just to touch on the second part of your question really quickly, so in line with leading by example and other state goals and guidance, we are looking to make this facility as sustainable as possible, including minimizing or eliminating, if possible, fossil fuels in the heating of the building. And we haven't, worked out the details exactly how that approach would work, or whether it would be 100% or there'd be a backup system, et cetera. That'll be kind of identified through the design process, but this will be in line with what is required in, of all state agency buildings set forth in leading by example.
Okay, I'm going to do a couple of quick questions from the chat and then we'll go back to Tad. So the next question from the chat is from Michael Epp. He asks, who is the design team? Will they show residential options for the Washington Street parcels?
So the design team that we have working with us on preliminary design is Jacobs, and we are 100% focused on the new facility. We see that the making available that 8 acres for future development would be very much a kind of the city and community process, and that we're not planning on, putting forward any designs for what would go on those parcels. We're really laser focused on the facility in our design effort.
Thanks. Another one from the chat from Jennifer Urain. Are you aware you are planning on running Lotus Street through private property?
Yep, so I think as is consistent with how Lotus Street's been portrayed in prior planning efforts, we expect that it will have portions of it that are on our property, portions that are off our property. And I think through the design process, we'll understand exactly where that would occur and coordinate with the city on ensuring that, we can work through a process with the property owners on developing that street. But, as noted, we are really early in this process. And so I know that you saw on the screen a kind of cartoon version of where it is planned for, but I think through the design process, we'll understand exactly where it needs to be built, and definitely have those conversations with property owners as well as the city, since it would be a public right of way. And so we're really early in that process right now.
Thanks. Next, we'll go to Tad Reed. And then after him is Brian Kane.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Alexandra Scott, thanks so much for the presentation. I'm here this evening with some of my colleagues at the BPDA, Jim Fitzgerald and Joe Blankenship, and I know Matt Moran from Boston Transportation Department is here tonight. We really appreciate this presentation. We're very excited about the opportunity to modernize the fleet, to electrify the fleet, to improve the air quality in the neighborhoods that would be affected by this electrification and modernization, and about the opportunity to move all the maintenance operations indoors. This is all really exciting. And we also look forward to working with you over the next several months to review the conceptual design as it progresses, together with the aspirations of the Plan JP Rocks, the Forest Hills Improvement Initiative, and the prior CPCAY commitments, to make sure that those are carefully considered and that the plan is entirely compatible with those, including such things as the 8-acre development parcel access to the properties, the new Lotus Street, and of course, neighborhood compatibility and urban design issues such as those raised by people on the call, such as the conditions along Arbor Way yards that Bart Mitchell mentioned. So just in short, we're very excited to be about this project and very excited to be working with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate those comments.
Thanks. Next, I'll go to Brian Kane.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Just great to follow up from folks at the BPDA. Brian Kane, I'm the executive director of the Mbta Advisory Board, which is a regional organization of 175 cities and towns served by the Mbta. Just here to express our support. This is an important project, not just for the neighborhood and for the many neighborhoods of Boston, but also the Arbor Way serves routes that serve Norwood, Dedham, Walpole, Westwood, Brookline, Newton, and Watertown, making this an important regional project as well. Clearly, eliminating CNG and moving towards a cleaner, more sustainable fuel source is something we all can get behind. And we clearly also support the enlargement of the fleet from 118 to 200 buses. So this is a win-win, and I just wanted to offer my support and encourage the authority to complete its design and construction by 2027, if not sooner. And just to let you know that we will be happy to help any way we can, ensuring funding through the CIP, the MPO, and any other ways that we can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Next, I'm actually going to move to Henry Allen, who was having some technical difficulties raising his hand earlier. So Henry, I'll ask you to unmute and you can unmute yourself.
Good, I've done that. Thank you, Scott and Alexandra and Laura. Thank you so much for this presentation. Like some of the other people on this call have spent more than 20 years on this effort. It's really exciting to see it move forward. And I think that when this project essentially got frozen by the MBTA many, many years ago, because of lack of funding and other factors, it was of course extremely frustrating for the community and the city. So it is, again, exciting to see this move forward at this point. And I think we deeply appreciate the work that the MBTA has done with the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Council, the successor to the CPCAY, to move it to this point, the conceptual design that you've put forward tonight. I would also say that in the last few years, obviously, much has changed around Forest Hills and much has changed in terms of the MBTA's requirements and particularly moving towards electrification, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And I think overall, the integrity of the work of the CPCAY and the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Council has held true up to this point, particularly the 8 acres, the contiguous nature of those 8 acres, and those acres being turned over to the city and the community. As the folks on the BPDA mentioned, once that land is turned over, it will really be the responsibility of the city and the community to work together to design the most appropriate use with the highest priority, which I think nearly everyone in the community agrees with, and the city certainly agrees with, will be for affordable housing. The one concern I have is the number of buses. The original MOU, of course, called for 118 buses, and we're now looking at 200 buses. And we're particularly looking at buses that do not originate and end at Forest Hills. So the original conception was we would ensure that the new modern facility would only be housing, maintaining buses that began and ended at Forest Hills. So that's clearly with buses coming to and from Southampton, that does not seem to be the case. So I guess the question is whether there will be any room for any flexibility and any compromise moving forward on the number of buses, because that's going to really increase road traffic in and around Forest Hills, which any of us who live at or near Forest Hills know the traffic concerns that exist there. So adding another number of buses going in and out of Forest Hills is going to only contribute to more traffic, more congestion. And even though these will be electric buses, it's going to tie up all of the cars that are burning more carbon monoxide into the atmosphere, where those cars are stalled, waiting to get in and out of Forest Hills. So it might be not a net gain, but a net loss. So I'm hoping that as we move forward with the 15% design, that one major concern that I have, and I think others in the community will have, can be addressed. And whether those 200 buses are permanent, or as you develop other modern facilities, the number of buses maintained and stored at Forest Hills will be reduced.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Henry, for all that. And I'll try to run through some answers. And as always, just let me know if I've missed anything. So the four routes that we showed earlier that we're proposing to shift into this larger facility are the 16, the 22, the 28, and the 39. So 2 of those routes, Henry, do come out of Forest Hills today. So at least for those 2 routes, that's an improvement for other kind of parts of the city in terms of when we have to deadhead those routes from other facilities over here to start service. So the 16 and the 39 are both Forest Hills routes. So the other 2 routes, certainly hear you there, the 22 and the 28. We're not necessarily increasing the deadhead mileage for those routes compared to where they come from today, but we're just kind of shifting it. I think a couple things to kind of keep in mind here are that these are buses that want to be kind of coming out of Arborway, coming out on Arborway and heading west over in the direction of Blue Hill Avenue. So they're not going to be not to say there wouldn't be ripple effects, but they're not going to be sort of interfacing with those intersections you're referring to. And it's also, the activity at these garages, tends to be at times that are not the peak time for general traffic on the roads. So these buses are oftentimes, they tend to be pulling out. Most of them are on the street by 7 in the morning that are going to be on the street, and then they're coming back, after 9 o'clock, and then same thing in the evening where they're coming back usually like 7 or later. So that's one way to just kind of keep in mind that these buses aren't, these routes that aren't already going to Forest Hills aren't going to have to navigate by those intersections by Forest Hills, and they're also going to be traveling at off-peak times. The other point I'd make, Henry, which you kind of alluded to at the end, asking about whether these would like permanently live here or go elsewhere. We talk about one of the goals of our program being, increasing, we build these facilities. We know from Quincy that they might be here for a century. So we want to build them with a little bit extra breathing room. We've already got a facility at Southampton that was built for, 70, 75 buses that we're already got 107 and growing at. So we want to build these facilities bigger, even just for that reason. So we've got room to grow. The other thing that we didn't go into, because we didn't want to turn this meeting into a deep dive on the whole program, is we've got 3 really big facilities that are at the core of our network at Charlestown, Cabot, and Southampton, that each of them is really space constrained, and at least a couple of them are in, extremely expensive property markets. Not that any property market in Boston isn't expensive today, but these are places where it's going to be challenging, if not impossible, for the T to increase our footprint. So, and these are already facilities that are overcrowded and not really efficiently, we're not really able to use them efficiently because of the fleet size we have at them today. So building each one of these facilities a little bit bigger, Quincy, Arborway, the next steps in our program beyond these, will give us the breathing room so that when the time comes to rebuild those final critical facilities at the core of our network, where we know we want to stay because so much of our service is oriented around the center of the region, we're going to be in a position to kind of move the deck chairs around so that we can rebuild those facilities and stage construction. And if we're not expanding Arborway, we're really, we like to focus on the near-term benefit in terms of electrifying routes in places like Roxbury and Dorchester that otherwise wouldn't get electrified for several years, but it's also going to just give us the system-wide breathing room to kind of move the fleet around, so that we can rebuild the whole network and bring these benefits to the whole region. So I think that's kind of how we think about it. My team is confident that demand is going to come back all the way and continue to grow. So we think that this capacity will get used up by service ultimately. But certainly if we get to the end of this program and our fleet is on target to be larger than we need, then there'll be conversations at that time about how many routes make sense to operate out of here versus some other newer facility. So hopefully that hits most of your points, Henry.
Okay, thanks, Henry.
Next
Next, I'll
to sleep. Yeah, I think
I'm going to move on to Susan and then Betsy.
Thank you. This is an exciting project. I had a question in the chat, but my husband raised his hand, so I'm going to ask my question first and then turn it over to him. The existing bus yard site, which would be turned over to the community, is there contamination on that site? And if so, would that be mitigated by the T before it's turned over to the community?
Yeah, I think I can take a stab at this one, Scott, and then if you have anything to add. So, we expect to go through kind of a full environmental process in terms of the construction of our new facility, and we haven't yet conducted the full sort of on-site environmental assessments to understand the scope of what's in the existing facility as well as on the 500 Arbor Way site. But as we move through those processes, we'll certainly come up with a more detailed plan of how we can handle any existing contamination and what the plan for that will be through this process. So I think not an extremely detailed answer at this point, but certainly something that we'll come back to and present on at every further point in the design.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan Thomas, and I'm the other half of Sue Pranger. But my question starts with the split of the 60 versus 40-foot buses. I didn't see on the plan how many 60-footers and how many 40-footers.
Scott, do you want to take that? Or? Yeah, I think we don't have an exact number in terms of the parking spaces, but we think it would be about 2/3 or so, maybe a little more than 2/3 40-foot, and the remaining 60-footers. It really will matter just kind of where we've allocated parking in the facility and where we've designed those pantographs for the 60-footers, as well as ensuring that we have enough maintenance space to accommodate them. And so right now we have about kind of like half as many maintenance space for 60-footers as 40-footers designed or programmed in the space.
Okay, and you had talked about the movement of buses from Arbor Way down to Nubian. And my question there is, we're not looking at any 60-footers on Washington Street, are we?
So I guess I'll take that one, Alexandra. So Dan, yeah, so right now, you know, the service we run on Washington Street, at least in the portion I think you're talking about, which is Forest Hills to Nubian, you know, I think because the Orange Line is running so close and parallel to it, we don't see the demand in that corridor that we see on other portions of Washington Street. Like if you're heading south from here to Roslindale, for example, or closer into town in the south end where we have the Silver Line service. So, you know, it doesn't feel to me like a place that's likely to see 60-footer service anytime soon. But I did want to just, I mentioned it earlier, there is a bus network redesign process going on that is sort of taking a look at our network and trying to figure out where, you know, where we might want to invest in a higher level of service in certain high priority corridors. So certainly I can't predict what's going to come out of that process, but just my sense as like someone with a little bit of background on this is that the proximity of that corridor, the Orange Line, makes it a less likely one to sort of see like those high capacity vehicles on it. I think, you know, the 42 and the service we've got out there today isn't among our highest demand corridors, whereas the 32 going in the other direction, which it feels like the same street, but it's Hyde Park Ave, that's a corridor that carries a lot of people, and its demand has come back, and that's like a more natural place where we introduce this.
So you're not looking at deadheading on Washington Street either?
Yeah, that would be like a operations decision that I guess I'd have to, you know, talk with them. This is something they've got another 6 years to kind of plan for. That would be decisions based on traffic conditions and travel time and what routes are suitable for the buses to be on. But again, there's, you know, the bulk of that travel would be happening at least a little bit outside of the sort of peak travel times for commuters, and the buses, in terms of, you know, I live on an Mbta bus route directly on one as well, and you know, the noise impact at least would be one that would be significantly reduced by these buses if you happen to be someone that lives on that stretch of Washington Street.
Right. Well, it's not the noise, it's the traffic. Right. So last question here. When they replaced the Casey overpass, you know, they put in 5 lights across the length of it, right? Will your new facility add another one where you have buses pulling out onto Arbor Way?
No, we're expecting that pull-in would occur where there already is a break in the in the median. So it's not actually where there's like kind of that curb cut that is existing, but it's kind of moved over to align with where there's already a light and a break in the intersection, or in the median rather.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we'll go to Betsy.
Hi, thank you. I'm very excited about this project, and I think that your answers today have been really forthcoming and helpful, so thank you. My one big question is, how are we going to keep up with new technology, and what are you thinking of for instance, if the storage battery capacity is increased, or if we are able to do solar panels that are on the rooftops of buses or any of those things, how is that fitting into the planning program?
Yeah, so I think just in terms of the vehicles, I think the big thing that we're hoping is that the battery technology continues to advance to the point where we can, you know, continue to reduce our reliance on diesel heaters to the, you know, coldest of the cold days, and then ultimately not have to use them at all. So I think that's one technology advancement that we're certainly looking to take advantage of. It's not, I don't know if I'd put it in the innovation camp, but I think we talked earlier, Betsy, about en route charging and trying to identify locations where we can get some infrastructure out on our routes so that we can top buses off. That'll also help us in minimizing the use of those heaters. You know, I think we are right now exploring kind of software tools that we're going to be using at Quincy and ultimately here that will help us manage our charging, so that, you know, I talked earlier about our ability to kind of like lean on depot charging overnight or the middle of the day. We think we can do that and meet service, but that may not be the most cost efficient way to do it, right, in terms of like utility charges and whatnot. So I think we're going to want to get as sophisticated as we can about how we're deploying buses and pulling which buses we're pulling out at what times, and which buses are going to be able to meet service on certain pieces of work that go out there. You know, it's easier today because you just fuel up a bus and go. But I think those are some of those technologies that we're looking at. I don't know if Alexandra, I see the Chief Engineer, Eric Studhoff. My boss has his hand raised, so I'll stop talking if he wants to jump in here as well.
Thanks, Scott. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. So in terms of the technology on the buses, our fleet team does go through an effort where they will, you know, periodically add systems to our buses, particularly aligned with overhauls of the fleet during what we typically call for, which is a midlife overhaul of our buses, where we can upgrade technologies. We do that fairly regularly, and we do expect that we would have at least one, if not two, opportunities with these buses to upsize some of the power density in those battery packs to help along with some of that technological advancement that we do expect the industry to be delivering for those fleets as we go forward. So hopefully that helps add to Scott and Alexandra. Great job with very comprehensive responses to questions and comments from folks.
Okay, thanks. I'll go next to Matt Moran.
Hi, this is Matt Moran with the Boston Transportation Department. Just want to say quick thanks to Scott and Alexandra for putting this presentation together, giving us the time to speak, and also thank my colleague Tad Reed and just echo a lot of the things he said. Just want to focus in real quick on the sort of this bus facility and what it means to the city. The City of Boston put out Go Boston 2030 several years ago, which really hammered home the need to shift people away from driving, improve our transit, improve our biking, improve our pedestrian facilities. And this goes a long way to helping us get the transit fleet that we need, particularly in neighborhoods like Roxbury, Dorchester, and Matapan. Having the full bus fleet, with a full 200 buses is something that's very important, and something that the city strongly supports for our, as I mentioned before, mode shift goals, our climate change goals, our equity goals. So just wanted to put that in, that we know that we still have a number of urban design and sort of details to work out, but BTD and the city in general strongly support this effort, and we're happy to continue working with Scott, Alexandra, and the rest of the team on this project.
Thanks for that, Matt. Appreciate it.
Okay, I didn't see any other hands up, so I'm going to go back to questions we got from the chat. And the first one I have is from Alan Iyer. Can you show how the primary and secondary bus access function And also, how do the two sizes of buses move through the facility as they move in and out and through the facility? And Alan, I can unmute you if you want to add anything to that question.
Okay. I didn't hear anything additional, so just to tackle the question. In terms of the details of primary versus secondary access, we haven't fully developed that yet, because we do know that we'll need to make improvements where the buses would come out onto Arbor Way in order to accommodate essentially our full needs for buses getting in and out of the facility. But one option would be for, if we were able to make improvements and then accommodate those full set of operational needs, to have a smooth path from Arbor Way turning left onto Hyde Park Ave for buses that are going both to Lower Busway and the Upper Busway. That secondary access would be, really just kind of like an emergency access point. However, since we haven't worked through exactly how that primary access point would work and the improvements that would be needed at that point, we know that it's possible that we'll need to rely on the secondary access point for kind of additional operational needs. And so this is something we're going to be paying really close attention to, and we'll definitely come back and report on when we come back for our next full public meeting, and happy to talk through in more detail kind of at other community meetings. And then the second question, sorry, can you repeat the second question? I forgot to write it down.
Sure. How do the two sizes of buses move through the facility as they move in and out and through the facility?
Yeah, so since it is going to be our first facility with a mix of 40s and 60s, we are going to look really closely at making sure that you can accommodate 60-foot turning radius and for all the movements where it'd be needed. The one where we know it wouldn't be needed is to back into maintenance bays that are specifically just for 40-footers. And for 60-footers, since they are long and articulated, we don't want them backing into bays. And so we have accommodate those through bays where you can, I don't have the presentation pulled up, but essentially you can pull through and in one forward movement, move counterclockwise through the service lane or a bypass lane and pull right into 60-foot maintenance bays, or pull around from the service lane where you do like your fare collection or your fluids, etc., and pull directly into storage. But we are ensuring that 60-foot buses can make all those movements, that the facility is flexible, which certainly does impact that footprint needed, because they do need a kind of wider space in order to make those turns. And then we'll place them in the storage at kind of opportune points for making those turns as well. I hope that answers your question without actually pulling up the diagram. We can certainly pull it up later and get into more detail if there's follow-up.
Thanks. The next question is from Jeffrey Ferris. Can you go over specific impacts to the bicycle path and pedestrian sidewalk along the Arbor Way?
Yep, so right now we are looking at that as a real boundary that we want to preserve. And so I think, there's an existing curb cut that would potentially shift over, but it wouldn't be different from sort of the state that you have today. And we are prioritizing preserving those existing facilities in terms of the end state of the building, and ensuring that our footprint doesn't affect those facilities. So that's something we're going to keep paying really close attention to as the design progresses, because we know that's a really important connection to Franklin Park.
Thanks. The next question is from Tim Reardon. Have you all looked into integrating electricity storage into the site?
Maybe I'll start. I don't know if Scott will want to join in on this. So yeah, I think that's something else, something that we'll certainly be looking at through this design process, particularly as we're thinking about resiliency, as we're thinking about sustainability, as we're thinking about the opportunity for solar on the roof. We don't have any specific plans around it currently, and we also have to certainly make consideration for the space needs that are required for significant kind of energy storage systems. And given that we have a really tight footprint that we're already working with, we definitely would have to kind of think carefully about how we could integrate that. But I think it's certainly something that's been discussed both from like a resiliency and sustainability perspective. So more to come on that. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks. The next question is from Ralph Walton. Is part of the heating by reversing the air conditioning into a pump in response to what happens when the lights go out?
In terms of kind of the vulnerability of heat pump systems for power outages, I think that even gas systems do rely on electricity to power them up as well, or that they think that sometimes you have vulnerabilities with kind of gas systems. We haven't identified the exact system that we're going to use for heating or cooling the building. And so we don't know if it's going to be a kind of air source heat pump that I think you're referring to in that question. But again, in terms of building heating and cooling and resiliency and power outages and ensuring we can get service on the road, that's definitely something that, we're going to be talking through as we design this facility to ensure we have the backup systems in place needed to remain operational at a certain threshold.
Thanks. The next question is from Peter Cameru. So since the 28 and 39 routes will be operating out of Arborway with the new facility, will some operators from Southampton Street be transferred to Arborway?
Yeah, so that's good question. So obviously, if we are increasing the amount of service out of here and the fleet out of here, that will require an increase in staffing, and the building is being sized appropriately to make sure we've got all of those kind of back of the house space needs for our operators and maintenance staff to support that. I think the actual mechanics of whether people are getting transferred to move over there, or whether we're kind of like going through regular attrition and retirements and then replacing those folks by hiring new folks to the new garage. I think those are questions that we're still a few years away from having to really grapple with. But yeah, this would result in, all other things being equal, a relocation of some of our staffing resources from other facilities to this facility.
Thanks. The next question.
Eric's hand's up, Laura. Just
I'm sorry.
Maybe he wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Laura and Scott. To that question, clearly any kind of relocation of our workforce between different garages is gonna come with a thorough involvement with our labor unions and with our staff. We are, as Scott and Alexandra have gone through, and Laura as well, this is several years away. So as it relates to any kind of labor relations within the MBTA staff, that would obviously go through a process with our workforce.
Thanks, Eric. The next question is another one from Ralph Walton. Is there any chance that the 28 will pull out in Walk Hill Street?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, Ralph, that's good to see you, Ralph, or good to hear your questions, Ralph. Yeah, I mean, those are decisions that'll get made, years down the road. I think that, just looking at the map and looking at the way this, the design Alexandra kind of walked folks through, I think that if a 28 is trying to get to Matapan Square to start service, it it would seem like the easiest way to do that would be to make a left out of the facility and make its way over to Blue Hill Avenue via Morton Street. But I think we're the very early stages of design for this project, and some of those service level decisions don't really get made until we get, you know, a little bit later in the process.
Thanks. Okay, so this question is from Fatima. Might the Matapan station be considered as a charging site for the 28 and future route buses?
So yeah, the Matapan site, I think, would be one that you know, it makes a lot of sense, right, Fatima? Because you have the 28 and the 31 are two pretty high ridership routes there. The 29, which won't be electrified yet, but ultimately all of our service would. So you've got a number of routes that are going to lay over there. It also has the, you know, the benefit of being an MBTA owned property, that we own property there, so that helps as well. I think we're going to be evaluating each of these sites based on how easy it is for the utility, you know, which in this case would be Eversource, to kind of get power to that location. There may be some isolated places in the network where we may be able to power it through our own power network, although those opportunities tend to be fairly limited. And then there's, you know, spacing and all of that. But yeah, Matapan station would seem to be a logical place for us to explore, even just as part of the Arborway project, because of the 28 and 31 coming out of there.
The next question is from Anna Vandersbeck. When will the bus procurement process start? Do you have specific manufacturers in mind?
So the process has already begun with the development of our specifications for that fleet. I think where, one thing that's happening right now is when we get a vehicle contract, we have, we basically have it's a 5-year contract. So we're gonna, design the fleet procurement for the BEB fleet so that we can have an initial order that will fill up kind of, Quincy, and then basically give us an option to buy that 80 to 100 buses a year, provided we've got the facility capacity to accommodate and support battery electric buses. But we're trying to kind of, I know that, and Eric may jump in again on this vehicle question, but we are trying to kind of set this up for success so that Quincy, which as we described earlier, is set to open in 24, and then Arborway, which is set to open in 27. We're trying to make sure we put this out on the street so that a 5-year contract will comfortably accommodate our BEB procurement needs for both Quincy and Arborway. And Eric, you want to add to that?
Oh, only a little bit. Great job with that, Scott. I think the notion that's difficult for folks to comprehend, and maybe we don't do the best job explaining it when it comes to vehicle procurements, is because of that 5-year nature of the contracts. We do put out the initial bid value is based on what we know the purchase size of the fleet would be, and then we build in options. And so the optionality builds us out to what we think could be the maximum purchase capacity for the contract over the course of the 5 years. And so we have one out there that's for the hybrid buses that I think folks have looked at as a big order of buses that we're hopeful that we are able to not exercise all options on. But then when we go forward with the battery electric procurement later on in 2022 and put that out on the street for the purchase of the base order, which is essentially the Quincy fleet plus the option years, which would come on with this facility would come online right towards the tail end of that contract. We would be able to use it to put the initial orders of buses into the Arborway facility from that original contract, which is built around upscaling to the most modern technology that the supplier would produce on a year-over-year basis of the order. So that's where we're trying to go with the vehicle procurements, and like Scott said, we are trying to get to that 80 to 100 buses per year purchase, which helps us get to a more steady average of our fleet age, because we do have just about 1,100 buses that make up our fleet, and we keep these buses per FTA guidelines for approximately 14 years, and so that gives us a nice level approach to keeping the same number of buses purchased every single year, so the average age stays fairly consistent around 7.5 years old.
Thanks. Next question is from Elena Saporta. Are charging umbrellas being considered along certain routes?
So if I understand the question correctly, I think this is similar to some of the questions we had earlier about en route charging capabilities. So that is, that is part of the plan. Again, I think we're confident that we can deliver the Arborway service without having to rely on en route charging, but we think that en route charging will benefit the service and give us more operational flexibility. So we are looking at locations, like I just said with Fatima's question a few minutes ago. I think, locations that are already MBTA owned sites, whether it's Ruggles or Nubian or Ashmont, Matapan, potentially, those may be easier than like Cleary Square or Walcott Square, places where we also have layover activity to a certain degree, but we'll need to obviously in those cases partner with our, the municipal partners and potentially private property owners. So we are going to explore that as part of this process, and that's something that our team, Eric, Alexandra, Laura, myself will definitely be looking at.
Okay, a couple of questions from Louise Johnson. How many buses are housed at Arborway now? And is it 200 buses that will be at the new facility?
Yep, so it's 118 is what's there today, and 200 is our program that we presented tonight.
And I think we also may have somewhat answered this question before, but just in case, is this going to be a Superfund cleanup site? How toxic is the pollution in the ground?
Yeah, so as we discussed previously, we're still in the midst of understanding the environmental assessments, where we'll learn more about any contamination or environmental issues on the site. And once we have that understanding, we'll be able to make an assessment of how that would be handled through the design and construction process, as well as in coordination, with the city and other stakeholders.
Okay, the next question is from Michael Epp. Are you coordinating your efforts with the hospital site development?
So I think we're referencing the Shattuck site. We've certainly had a couple conversations with Emerald Necklace Conservancy as a stakeholder in this, but I think as we've explained earlier, I think we really need to focus our efforts on the bus facility. So our plan is really kind of centered around meeting that MOU target of the 8 acres, kind of meeting it in the location that we understand the community wants it in, which is that Washington Street frontage all the way down to that signature intersection with the Arborway. And then, we're not the folks you really want doing your land use planning for things other than transportation uses. So I think our hope is that those conversations, while we want to be a resource to them as needed, those conversations we wouldn't really be central to them.
Okay. Can someone point out on the map where the promised large green space buffer between this and the residential neighborhood is supposed to be? I'm not sure if we have that map handy.
Sorry, to pull up the map. Sorry, can you repeat that question, Laura? I wasn't sure.
Sure.
Scott.
they're asking to point out where the promised large green space buffer between this and the residential neighborhood is supposed to be.
So well, Scott, do you want to talk about the MOU or do you want?
I think this was a question that we answered earlier, right? We were, I think there's still a lot of coordination that we need to do with the city. I think, as Alexandra noted earlier, I think we represented Lotus Street where it's kind of been represented on prior efforts, sort of as part of our desire to kind of align ourselves with work that's already been done on the site. So yeah, I think those are things we're still kind of working through the details on.
Yeah, and I think just the 8 acres is certainly where we think the program that we've laid out is in line with what was identified in the MOU, and that we know has been a priority for the community and expressed through a number of other mechanisms in addition to the MOU, and that the end uses for that site, which I think have been a couple of questions and that we've talked about, are not going to be determined through our facility design, but would be determined through kind of a separate process.
Okay. Just trying to see if there's anything we haven't covered yet. One question from Susan. The continuation of the Emerald Necklace was envisioned as connecting Arboretum and Franklin Park, two of the largest gems. The proposal looks more like the Emerald Sidewalk. How wide is the connector?
So I think what we've been referencing on the maps that we showed earlier is the connection that was constructed through the KC overpass project that we have expect to remain kind of intact as that connection, which I think is has accommodations for kind of a separated bike facility and sidewalk facility. So that's what we've been referencing as sort of that Emerald Necklace connection. I'm not sure if Susan was referencing a different aspect of the plan.
Okay, another one from Susan. Where is the substation to supply this station? Is it included in the site?
So I'm not sure exactly where the Eversource's substation that would serve this site is located, but the site itself would require kind of a switching station to support the power needs, and where we haven't finalized exactly where that would go on the site, but certainly an area where there's going to be more to come as we flesh out the details of the design.
Thanks. This is a question from Jennifer Urain. What about connecting the western part of Lotus with Stoneleigh and Stedman? The BPDA has been talking about needing an egress, especially for fire trucks, from those narrow dead-end streets, and now streets that now have about 100 units of housing either built, under construction, or approved. It is also in the JP Rocks plan. So it's about connecting the western part of Lotus with Stoneleigh and Stedman.
So I think this might be from Jennifer. I'm not sure if this is, the question is whether that could be kind of like an early action as part of the process. I think that's something that, is certainly would be discussed in these discussions that we're starting and continuing to have with our friends over at the BPDA, as well as the BTV, which we heard from earlier. And Jennifer, I know we had talked also in the chat about us coming out, to the local neighborhood association to talk in more detail about a lot of these plans as well. And so definitely happy to kind of pick that back up as we're able to come out. But we don't have plans for that to be in kind of an early action as of yet, but that's definitely something that could be kind of like further discussed. Scott, I'm not sure if you have anything additional on that topic.
Just to apologize to Jennifer, because I've had a little chat discussion with her as well, and if her intent was for me to share those with the group, I apologize, but I'm glad we got the question to the larger group.
Thanks. Another question from Alan. Have ownership and grade elevation issues been worked out with the city and abutters on Lotus?
Yep, and I was chatting with Alan on this too. I know it's a long history of with this project, so we're excited to continue to work with you on this. So you know, we're doing initial geotechnical work. We're kind of completing the initial survey work, environmental assessments. That's all kind of ongoing as we're really kicking off this design process. And so as we get back in the results from the survey, and we'll have a better understanding of how that would impact the design. And particularly like any grading issues that there might be right over in that area. So again, because we're out so early, we don't have a really specific answer to get back to you on, but definitely know, I think we were just talking with the team about the grading out there earlier and getting a better sense of it through the survey that's being undertaken. So thanks, Alan. Thanks for your patience. I know you sent that question to me a long time ago, and I had just alerted Laura of it because it kind of got lost in the chat. Sorry about that.
This is another one that's related. I'm not sure if we answered it already, but it's from Ralph Walton. Is any of the land north of Lotus Street MBTA property possibly currently rented to others?
Could you repeat that? Oh, sorry, Richard's here. Okay.
I can answer that. Not to my knowledge. I don't believe any of it is MBTA property.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, we have one more from Susan. At this time, it is my understanding that slow charging depot batteries and fast charging en route batteries are mutually exclusive. Please confirm.
Yeah, so that's the same understanding we have from our vehicle engineering team. That does not preclude us from taking advantage of something like en route charging. I think it just I think there are some systems and some route networks that may work better with a smaller battery that can take a charge faster and sort of rely exclusively on that en route charging. I think our service is a little bit different. And I think that, one of the things we're trying to do with this transition, which is in some ways the largest change we've had in our kind of surface street running transit network since we started converting streetcars to buses, a century ago. We're trying to do this in a way that our operations folks can absorb these changes as simply as possible. So I think, at least for these initial facilities, we think relying on depot charging where we're confident that can meet our service needs is the right way to go. That's going to keep our kind of fueling, so to speak, at the depot the way it is today, and our operators who already have, a lot to deal with traffic and folks like me on our bicycles and pedestrians, and then passengers boarding and alighting and trying to do all that safely. I think that, we're trying to kind of minimize the additional things they need to do. But we do think that en route charging, even though these batteries wouldn't absorb a charge as quickly, we do think that when we're laying over for 10, 15 minutes, as occasionally happens at some of these depots, that we would still benefit from having en route charging.
Thanks, Scott. All right, we have a few more. Another one from Ralph Walton, which I think we've touched on, but just want to ask the question in case. Does the old MOU lock the MBTA into designing the facility smaller than the MBTA's projected fleet size, including routes which more logically should pull out from the Arbor Way location?
So yeah, I guess just to answer that, Ralph, I think when we went through the MOU earlier, I think there's some provisions in there that I think have either kind of already been addressed by other projects, other things that we think don't really reflect the kind of current realities, either on the part of what's happening in the neighborhood or what's happening with our bus service. I think, I don't know if it was Michael or one of the other folks that's been in these conversations for a lot longer than we have, made a similar comment. as well. So we've, we put out what we think our program need is for this site in order to, play the role it needs to play in our overall modernization effort and make sure we're bringing zero emissions technology, not just to the routes already served out of this garage, but even more routes serving, low income communities just across the park, many of which are oriented out of the Forest Hill Station as well. So that's the size fleet that we're, proposing to move forward with here.
I'm going to ask one quick follow-up question that's related and then go to Mila. So have the capacity estimates for the facility taken into account the possibility of a 24-hour bus network? And that's from Daniel Steele.
So, when we do our, was that from Mela or was that from someone else?
That was from Daniel. It was just
okay.
related to the one we just did, and then we'll go to Mela.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I guess on that one, Daniel, I mean, when we're doing, when we're doing modeling work to understand, what are going to be the traffic impacts of these facilities, what's going to be our charging strategy, how much space do we need? We, for better or worse, we've got to base that on today's service that we run. I think I mentioned a few times today that there's a bus network redesign process that is underway that could change how we run service. There's talk of it maybe resulting in a service that's less peaky. That's one of the things we've seen during the pandemic, right, is that our peaks shrunk and we didn't lose as much off peak, and it's resulted in a kind of flatter demand profile over the course of the day. So I think that there may be changes in the network that we'll have to kind of regroup and understand, but we work really closely with that team on a near daily basis. Overnight service is not something that we are running today. I think it's something that every 10 years or so gets attempted, and for a variety of reasons. I think one of them being that the market may not quite be there to support overnight transit service. We don't really have that service today, but that's not to say it couldn't exist in the future. And if it does, it'll be something that we'll incorporate into our planning for this facility over the next 6 years.
Thanks, Scott. All right, next we'll go to Mela.
So, am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. Couple of things. First of all, what efforts are being made to reach out to communities on the other side of the park or in Matapan? I know Rep Holmes was here or may still be here, but when the Casey overpass came down, there was not a lot of extra effort done to make sure that the communities that are being impacted by electric bus electrification and so on, that they are part of the community process to make sure that their voices are being heard and their input is being received. So what efforts are being made there? And the second question is, if the MBTA could look into partnering up with the surrounding communities around like community solar programs, so that we can see more sustainable energy sources that would actually be able to impact the communities. I don't know, did you say you're not putting solar panels on the roof of the facility?
No, we didn't say that, Mela. We said we weren't intending to put them on the roof of the buses, but that the facilities, part of our design standards are to accommodate solar on the roofs of the facilities. So do you want me to take the first question, Mela?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope from working with me for 12 years now that we're certainly going to do whatever we can to make sure we're getting out and reaching everybody that's going to be affected by this facility. I think that we, there may have been a time where people would come out and plan a project like this and assume that that it was simply a sort of like neighborhood focused community impact. Certainly, we don't want to minimize that this is a big change for what's happening at Arbor Way, and that we very much want to make sure the folks that live around here and travel through this intersection and the station are plugged into this process and have a voice. So we definitely don't want to minimize that, but yeah, certainly as that map I showed earlier demonstrates, the stakeholders for this really stretch from the south end all the way to, you know, Walpole, and certainly heavily on the east side of the parks over off the Blue Hill Ave corridor and Columbia Road and Talbot Ave. So we definitely want to get out there. I've been in discussions with Fatima about, you know, getting on the agenda at the January Greater Matapan Neighborhood Council meetings. That's something we definitely want to do. We certainly made an effort, recognizing it's tough. It can be tough to get the word out without like boots on the ground, but we did make an effort to kind of put, advertisements for this meeting on all of the buses that come out of Arborway, which means all of the buses that are operating, like the 31 on that side of the park already. You know, riders would have seen that. It was in multiple languages. And we also did put it on the two yellow bus routes coming out of Southampton, the 28 and 39. So those riders, you know, we made the attempt to inform them. We also had notices on all of our subway station digital ad displays, public service announcements. But yeah, Mela, you know how to reach me. So if there's a group you think, you know, whether it's Project Right or Four Corners or any of those groups that you think would want to hear from us, we're happy to come out and talk to them.
I'll speak to them about getting that on some of the neighborhood associations or Project Right meetings and things like that. We're in coalition with Fairmount groups. So yeah, that was one of my major concerns. And then partnering up so that, you know, the solar piece, because I think that every MBTA facility should have solar panels on the roof to lower their carbon footprint and to just be better neighbors in the community so that everybody can benefit from these new technologies. Well, they're not new, but from, you know, things like that being installed within community.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. Yeah, it's definitely a good opportunity for solar when you have like these really large, expansive roofs, which we're seeing with the Quincy facility. And so really interesting idea about the community solar. We'll bring that back to the environmental department who manages the way that we install and kind of operate our solar contracts. And certainly is something that we can kind of come back with when we come back out, whether to the smaller groups and also to the next larger meeting. Thanks, Mela.
Yeah, keep me in the loop because we work on projects like that with some of our solar cooperatives, and I serve on a board of one of those. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we have one more comment from the chat from Zach DeClerc. Just a comment that it would be great to offer some space for wall murals or art small footprint programming along the Arbor Way side of the property, since that street front can't be developed otherwise for community use. He says, very exciting project, can't come soon enough. Thanks, Zach.
So thank you, Zach, for that comment. I think in this design process, we're going to pay really careful attention to kind of the facade and the design of the facility. I know that, murals are in particular challenging because they do require kind of a significant amount of additional maintenance to make sure they're like kept looking fresh and nice. That can be challenging for kind of MBTA facilities. However, I think if we want to kind of keep an open mind of thinking about how the facade can be active in its like permanent state, as well as other opportunities to kind of get feedback from the community on what they want to see on that facade, and also take into account kind of our maintenance needs, so that we can just like keep our forces focused on getting service out there, and make sure that kind of our building is easy to maintain. So that's definitely the approach that we'll be looking to take with this.
Great. I think does that look like it's it, Laura?
Yeah, it does. I would just invite anyone else for any last questions to raise their hand.
Yeah, and we can, we're definitely available to answer any questions. Yeah, please reach out to us. Let us know if there's any events that you'd like us to go to. I see Rep Holmes jumping in here while I was starting my wind down. So Representative, we'll let you get the last word.
Adam, thanks for taking the time tonight, Scott. I think this was very beneficial. Clearly what you would have expected from the JP, Roxbury, Matapan folks. So I think you and Alexandra and the whole team did a good job. And so let's particularly look at the road and make sure we deal with any of those questions. We got a lot of questions about that tonight. So it's great to have this many eyes looking at the project, because everyone from Alan to Mela to everyone, you know, they're so passionate about this. They give us so many views. I just wanted to say that all those that were still remaining as well. Thanks for all the input. It really is very much appreciated. And Scott, as usual, you and Alexandra will be working together well on this. So thanks for sticking it out tonight. You guys have a good night.
Thank you, Representative. So I think just a couple closing sort of like technical things. The meeting, as I mentioned up front, it is recorded and it's going to be available on the website probably, I would guess, early next week, based on I think what Alexandra said, based on our experience from prior meetings. We do have a dedicated webpage that folks can go to. You know, there was more information here tonight than you'll find on the page if you go on it immediately, but that's where you can go to get updates on the project. It's www.mbta.com/arborwaybus is that website. And you, like I said, you can share comments with Alexandra and myself, but we also have, it's just a little bit easier for bookkeeping if you at least copy arborwaybus@mbta.com when you're making those comments. And we'll be back, as we showed on the schedule, we'll be back with a big kind of formal meeting when we get to the 15% design threshold. But hope that hope to see at least some of you before then, as we piggyback on other folks' agendas and explain the project to them. So thanks everybody for putting in the time tonight. We really appreciate it, and have a good evening.